But what is really the story of these markets right now? What do you see on the charts that the mainstream narrative is missing?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of issues out there that are emerging, and part of that is in the economic data, right? I mean, you just mentioned before 911,000 jobs revised downwards, and that's a massive number. I believe the biggest number we've ever had. I can't help but chuckle at the fact that it was 911, so like dial 911 for the economy. Then we saw jobless claims this week that jumped sharply. Now, granted, 1 week of jobless claims doesn't necessarily make a trend, but it's starting to show us that there is a contracting labor market, and that's a concern. And then you put in the charts, and the charts are where things get even more interesting, where past cycles, when they've topped, we're seeing the exact same things. We're seeing irrational exuberance from investors where they're willing to buy these kind of pump and dump stocks. We're seeing big names like Oracle going up 40+%. Biggest move on a large cap that has ever occurred. And these, again, historically are major signals of irrational exuberance. And so, again, I do want to go into some of these charts because they do absolutely give us a clue into what the markets are doing. So let's start with the S&P 500. Here's the S&P 500. This is what's called a wedge pattern. Now, upsloping wedge patterns, as they get tighter, it contracts and kind of makes a pressure cooker of the market. In other words, it's putting the market tighter and tighter, ready to explode in one direction. I base my analysis off probability. And when you see this type of pattern, this is a pattern that is basically winding a spring ready to break in one direction. This pattern formation has a 70% chance of breaking to the downside. If that happens, it's not just going to be a small move, it's going to be a major move to the downside. So again, this is just the S&P. You mentioned the insider buying and selling. That is an unbelievable, scary chart, and it has gone on for months. The fact that we have been seeing more and more of insiders just dumping, and we're talking Jeff Bezos, billions of dollars. Now, you could say he just wants to buy another yacht. Okay, that's fine. But what about other insiders, right? So let's take a look at what we have
he has an expensive fiance there, Gareth. That
He
wife
does.
now that he's got a fund. But no, you were the one that signaled to me, look out for these insider trades, because you said this is a huge sign that we're late in the cycle. So yeah, break that data down for us.
Yeah, so this data shows us, and this is just the last 30 days, but if you were to look at the last 6 months, it almost looks identical. And the green obviously represents the buying, the insider buying. And remember, when it's an insider, it's basically a CEO, CFO, CTO, COO. I mean, these are people with intricate knowledge on their business. And if they are dumping like this, number one, why are the markets still going up? Because you have retail FOMOing into this market, but it tells you their viewpoint on where they think their stock is valued at. And they obviously wouldn't be selling if they thought their stocks were undervalued. I mean, that's just common sense. And so, I'm all about breadcrumbs, right? You want to take each little breadcrumb and put it together. And once you start getting a mountain of breadcrumbs, you have to start paying attention. And there's so many of these signals out there that just continue to ramp up.
Okay, we'll get into more of those signals, but I do want to get more into this insider action. We mentioned Jeff Bezos of Amazon. Who else? Who else has been a big seller now?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen Benioff sell with Salesforce. He's been unloading now for quite some time. Zuckerberg has been unloading. And obviously, those are the names we all know. But needless to say, it's not just those. I mean, you look at other major players out there. I mean, even Jensen Huang is unloading some of his position. Now, you could say, again, some of these guys just want to take some money out and kind of pocket it, if you will. And no one can blame them for that. But again, when you see it this lopsided, right? That chart we just looked at was massive red almost every single day, and you can barely see the green, and that was just the last 30 days. Imagine that chart going back 6 months of that every single month. There's a trend there, and these insiders they know exactly what they're doing. Let's be fair.
So, Gareth, you mentioned Jensen Huang, that is the CEO of NVIDIA. For those not familiar, he's sold roughly, I believe, $35.5 million worth of stock in a few transactions. But pull up that insider chart again, because I want you to really explain what those bar charts in the red mean. What does that actually mean? Where does that data come from?
Yeah, so this data comes, so every time an insider unloads, sells or buys, they have to report it, right? Because they're an insider, they have to be tracked to make sure they aren't doing something illegal, right? So for instance, there's a quiet period just before a company reports earnings where insiders are not allowed to unload their stock. They can't buy or sell because the idea is they know what their earnings are going to be. And so 30 days prior they can't do it. But once that passes, they can do anything they want. They can buy, they can sell. And what we're seeing is just massive amounts of selling. And so each candle represents literally hundreds of millions of dollars potentially. I mean, here you're talking about this one over here is over $3 billion in insider selling on this one particular day, which looks like the 10th of September. So just literally